The March 14th, 2022 Board of Commissioners work session to order. First up, we are going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And tonight we have our Director of Public Works, Willard Troxel, who is going to lead us in the pledge.
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, for all.
Deanna, will you take the roll call, please?
Paul, President.
Here.
Catherine Carter, Vice President. Liz McNaney, Commissioner. Ruth Damsker, Commissioner. Here. Sandra Zadell, Township Manager. Here. Megan Weaver, Assistant Township Manager. Here. Lauren Gallagher, Township Solicitor. Here. Isaac Kessler, Township Engineer. Here. David Duffy, Chief of Police. Nathan Crittenden, Finance Director. Van Reeker, Zoning Officer. And it is noted that Martha Similaro is absent.
Thank you, Deanna. Next up, I'd like to turn it over to Commissioner McNaney.
At this point, it's not on the agenda because it is a surprise. So I would like to invite John Clayton from Norgwen Baseball up to the microphone at this time for our surprise.
Thank you very much. My back to some people. Norgwen Baseball and Softball is very, very fortunate to have the sponsors that we have. We have people from all over our community supporting our program, and it starts with the people in this room. We can't thank you enough for all the support you've given us over the years, and it's we're just very fortunate that we've had two major projects over the last year. Before I start, I'm the field director up there, and also like a project manager. It seems to be I've become that. But the last 2 years, we've done two major things up at the ball fields. One is an enclosed batting cage we call the Hawk's Nest. It's one of a kind. No one else around here has it, except Plymouth Township now came over, looked at ours, asked me to come over and look at theirs, and so they're building one too. So it's a good thing for baseball to have a facility like that. The second project that we're doing right now is a total renovation to Hostelli Stadium. Ben Hostelli started, was significant in Norgwen, and the field has been sitting there for 25 years at least. So we've added new dugouts, we've added warning track, we've added raised right field, and we probably put 60 truckloads of dirt out there to make it take it from a high school field to a collegiate level field, which is very appropriate because Chestnut Hill College is now using Hostelli Field as their home base. I mentioned before that it all starts with the people in this room, but there's one specific person that I'd like to talk about, and I'd like him to join me up here right now. So, Willard, would you like to come up here? You were trying to sneak out the door, weren't you? There, my God. One of the things that I do, or, I have a lot of ideas about how we can make this the best facility in the area. And the first person I call is Willard, right? Because Willard knows everything about what's going on up there, and he can probably tell you where the last shovelful of dirt from 1962 was, because he put it there. But well, maybe not that long. And the nice thing is that Willard tells, I'll ask him a lot of things, and then he'll tell me. We decided that what we wanted to do is recognize Willard for all the things that he's done up there. And every time I thank him for what he does, he says one thing: it's for the kids. And that is very incredible because it is for the kids. And first of all, I want to give you a hat because everybody needs another hat. Okay? And I also want to give you this commemorative T-shirt about Hostelli Stadium. And on the back is a lot of our sponsors. It says Upper Gwynedd Township. It doesn't say you exactly. Yeah. Longer than Willard. So thank you for all you do for 2022. So this is a commemorative bat for you, and we really appreciate everything that you do for us.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, buddy. So I have one more announcement too. At our board meeting last Thursday for Norgwen baseball and softball, we know that there's people out there like Willard that deserve special recognition. So we made a motion to adopt call it a Lifetime Achievement of Support Award. It's pretty new. We're not quite sure exactly what it's going to be called or what the criteria is. But certainly one of the criteria is going to be it's for the kids. Will be one. But and I'm very pleased to say that, and this award will be on our website. We'll put a board up around our complex, very similar to some of the other boards we have, our Hall of Fame board and things like that. And it's my pleasure to say that you are the 2022 inaugural member of this prestigious club.
Aw.
And thank you very much. We're very, very happy to have you. Thank you.
I
Don't
do
be too
just
mad.
want to make one comment, and there's no I in team, and it's my team, both past and present, that have done the work out there. Not just me, but everybody. And I just enjoy how everybody works as a team to get things done. And I do appreciate this. You know I don't like that, but
And if you didn't leave the,
it's very nice. Thank you very much.
Willard, if you didn't leave the event where you were supposed to get that, then
I sort of caught
that's
that,
why I
but
was,
I didn't know what was up.
texting you,
So
asking where you were.
one time I go home early and see what happens.
Yeah, see what happens.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For the kids, Will, but
Yes, sir.
it's for the kids.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next up, we have an Eagle Scout, Joseph O'Mara, who we are going to recognize at our meeting next week. He's a resident and he also is a former employee of our township. He's worked in the summer before. So we're going to talk about that next week. Next up, we have the announcement of our executive sessions, and I'm going to turn it over to our solicitor, Lauren Gallagher.
Thank you. The board did meet in executive session earlier this evening to discuss matters of personnel and potential litigation.
Thank you, Lauren. Next up, we have our public comment section. We ask that you keep your comments to 5 minutes. We want you to remember that our intention is to keep our meetings respectful. So we ask that you observe proper decorum and that you remember that your comments are part of the public record. That being said, Fred Hankin, would you like to start?
Hi, Fred Hankin, 802 Clover Drive. Thanks for having me.
Sure.
Is John still here? I've known John for years. It's a great organization up there. It's been terrific. I was up there. Liz, I know you've done some work up there. Yeah, good for you. So, if I could just start by saying, regarding the new guidelines that were published. I just saw this morning when it came out, but this seems to me to be a little bit draconian. I mean, is this an attempt to limit our public discussions at these meetings? I understand at the school board they have dozens and dozens of people that say the same things over and over and over again. I get that, but previous boards here at Upper Gwynedd Township allowed for more interaction, and there was very limited, there were hardly ever any limits put on people when they came to these meetings. And I know this because I've attended many meetings in the past. Second question is, can you tell me why the meeting agendas seem to be constantly changing, sometimes 3 to 4 times before a meeting? I believe this is the 3rd or 4th version of this meeting for today. I would really recommend version controlling your documents. So we know, I think at the last meeting, Sandra, we talked about not knowing which document was what because, you know, we don't know exactly when they've been updated. By changing these meeting agendas all the time, it's unfair to the members of the public who read these agendas to prepare for discussion at these meetings. What was the last amendment that was made to the agenda that just came out today? Does anyone know?
We added the fire department's
Oh, okay, thank
presentation.
you.
That came out today.
Thank you. Again, I would recommend version controlling, just so we know people know what version of the document they're reading. As Liz, you just pointed out, I was not aware of that was on there. Finally, I know there's some talk today regarding reducing the staff and staffing working from home. And now that we're coming out of COVID, this seems a little backwards, or as my high school math teacher used to say, this seems a little bass-ackwards. Reducing the staff by allowing people to work at home is counterproductive to the needs of the people of the township that the township serves. This idea is contrary to being transparent, which this is what we hear time and time again. Past administrations took great pride in being available to the public on an 8-hour day, 5 days of work. They did their best, even during blizzards. There's no replacement for a teamwork environment that is achieved through having everyone together, where everyone's expertise is readily available, where township records and files are readily available as well. This proposal will reduce access that the public might have to township staff. The workweek schedule should be built around the needs of the taxpayers and not the employees. Not everyone is interested in virtual meetings, especially older citizens. They want personal contact. I think we all can appreciate that. The township should be making accessibility to every member of the staff easier and not more difficult. And finally, you're spending money on township building modifications to this building, as I recall from previous meetings. But at the same time, you're reducing the office staff requirements. So I'm a little befuddled by that, although I believe this room is being modified to allow for more people in the room. So those were my comments for today.
Thank you, Fred.
Do you have any comments back to me? Or
No,
thoughts?
thank you for your comments. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Beth Miller.
Hi, I'm Beth Miller, 405 West Prospect Avenue. And I just wanted to say, I just received the email, the Upper Gwynedd Gazette, the email newsletter, and it was very cool. I liked it, and I sent it to some other residents in the township that in case you didn't have their emails. So thanks for making that start to happen, because it looks great and it's informative.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Beth. Next up, we have David Kenyon.
Hello, my name is David Kenyon at 1000 South Broad Street. I would like to talk about the excessive building that's apparently happening around here, right down the street. And it says it right there that there's 17 townhomes going on in a little lot that they just tore down the building. How many acres is that lot? It's like 2 or 3 acres, or 3 or 4. How do you fit 17 buildings into 3 or 4 acres, and everyone has to be a half an acre? I'm not understanding that. But anyhow, you know, I just wanted to talk about, and then there's another one on Pembroke, and then there's 44 dwellings going on up there. If this township's already built out, then why is there, 50 some odd new buildings going to be put into the township? That seems like a reasonable question. So the township is already built out. You know, you got the village at Gwynedd Square, at Gwynedd, the woods at Gwynedd, manufactured homes, Gwynedd Club, Willowwick Apartments. There's a lot of affordable housing and high-density housing in that area. I feel that there really shouldn't be that much more building in this town since, you know, the situations that I've been dealing with and with the open space and all that. I think building, you know, 50 some odd whatever kind of houses would be, you know, not good, especially, you know, with the things that I've been dealing with for the past 6 months. It's been really bad. So, you know, I really don't like being in a newspaper and all that kind of business. I don't want any of that. But it just seems on one hand, you're looking to build a park on 30 some odd acres and then saying that you don't have enough open space and then turning around and building 50, 60 homes. What's the angle there? Are you trying to build up the town so you're able to build a park so more people would be more supportive of park because you put another 50 some odd townhomes and, you know, made more traffic in the township? Is that what's going on? Or what other reasons do you have for putting 50 some odd houses in the township? I think that's about all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, David. Tom Borneman?
Tom Borneman, 722 Green Street. I'd like to know about the 44 units that are being proposed that you're going to be voting on, I believe, next week. Has any consideration been given to the traffic impact that these 44 units will have at Church and Sumneytown in the borough of Lansdale? The existing signalization in Upper Church Road is fairly complicated and tightly synchronized. I'm wondering if you've given any consideration to the traffic study for that development.
I don't know where you're referring to. What 44 units?
The Pembroke Parkway, 44 units that's on the agenda for next Tuesday night.
It's just in Van's report.
the
It's
Walter
not on the
Strip.
agenda
Oh, okay.
for next week.
Yeah, we're still talking about that.
Okay.
Yeah, we're still talking about it.
it.
But you are welcome to come when we are talking about it at the Planning Commission meeting. What other meetings might the public be able to?
As far as, I don't know, Megan knows the schedule, but is it on the planning commission agenda?
No, this is still in the review period.
Right.
So.
Right. No, I mean, once it's at the Planning Commission, you're more than welcome to come to that meeting. If we have a community meeting about it, if we decide to move forward with it, you're very welcome to come to that. We do try to be very transparent about all the community meetings that we
Okay.
have, and we can absolutely include you in that if you would like.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
President Hall, I also wanted to just clarify, and I'm sure Van will touch on this, but the proposal for 1500 Pembroke Parkway at this point is a zoning map and text amendment.
Mhm.
It would still have to put land development plans together, and during that process is when they would have traffic studies and their proposed just site layout and things of that nature. So the vote next week is not on any kind of land development. at
Oh,
this
right.
stage. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed
There
that
is
you
no
thought it
vote
was
next
land
week.
development. And there's no vote, right? Like that's so preliminary. We're so at the very, very beginning stages. We're just talking with them, quite honestly. Varaf? I'm sorry. How do you pronounce your name?
You got it right.
I did? Okay, sorry about that. Oh, all right.
Well, you have just decided to put about 9 houses right next to my house. It's a small lot. I have just one question for you all. Since the 2040 comp plan seems to be driving this, what was the source of the township further growth projections that are contained in the 2040 comp plan? The fact there are numbers in the 2040 comp plan does not prove that the numbers are accurate as part of natural growth. Any growth numbers can be achieved if you have an agenda to reach a particular population. Was this a county planning commission growth number? That's my question.
Can I ask you a question first?
Sure.
You said that we decided to put 9 houses next to your house?
State Street. 229 State Street, right next to that.
Roosevelt Court.
I don't know what you named it.
Okay. So you don't mean right next to you exactly. Do you mean behind you or across the street
It's
from
right
you?
next to me, and there's a small.
Okay. Did you come to any of the meetings that we had about that?
I did come to one meeting, but I was busy. I couldn't come to all the meetings.
Okay. So we did work very closely with the community with that specific land
And
development.
I'll tell you one thing, the community is not happy about it. They just know nothing is going to change your minds. So
Yeah.
that's what it is.
Well, see, actually, I knocked on about 120 doors and I talked to all those people. And those people came to several community meetings we had.
I know.
The residents who were very interested, we also made sure we let them know when there were the different planning commission meetings, when there were the different land development process, which I was sharing with Mr. Borneman.
I understand
So
that,
we
but-
have really worked very hard with the community to make sure that they felt like they had input and that they knew the whole plan from the very beginning. If you'd like to talk afterwards, or if you'd like to talk later, I can share with you some of the things that we've already covered at other meetings. As far as the comprehensive plan, I don't know exactly what you're referring to. But again, if you would like to set up a time, we'd be happy to meet with you where we could get the answer to your question. If you'd like to meet with our township manager or meet with one of us or two of us during our office hours, we could do that.
Okay, will do. So
Okay,
thank
great.
You.
Stay afterwards and we'll get your information.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
You can also reach out to me at the township building if you don't want to stay for the whole meeting. I know sometimes people want to go, but
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You don't have to stay if you wanted to. Okay, moving on. Next up, we have our departmental reports, and I'm going to turn it over to our township manager, Sandra Zadell.
thank you, Commissioner Hull. So I instantly turn it over to Van Reeker, our planning and zoning expert.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Sandra. So just a sort of an update, and then I'll touch on a few things that maybe were mentioned previously very quickly. This is a status report. This doesn't mean that anything on this agenda is going to be voted upon next week. This is typically a report to the commissioners so that they can be made aware of potential future action items next week, next month, in 6 months. So because it's on this agenda, doesn't mean somebody's going to vote on it next week. Okay, thank you. And to that point, the first item on the agenda is are the 17 townhouses at Jeppe. That's been through a 5-year process. I was about to say, this is probably going to be the last night I'll be reporting about Jeppe, AKA Wheatley Walk, at this meeting, because once they pull permits, it'll slide over to the activity report, which we also publish on a monthly basis. But the status is that it's been approved by the commissioners and subject to receiving the final inventory of documents. The plan will be finalized, and then permits. In fact, the demolition permit has been issued, and today the buildings were actually down. So they're on their way to cleaning that property up. We saw it as a derelict property and in need of some desperate attention over the years. Without going through the details, the township gave it a number of years of examination and believed that this particular plan was the best solution that they had received or heard of in 3 decades. So that's that particular plan. There are then 2 zoning matters that are potentially, not next week or next month, potentially action items for you in the future, and I'd like to keep you up to date on that. The first one is 375 Morris Road. We know that is the Axe building. It exists. There's been a proposal by, the building's been for sale for a number of years. There's been a proposal by the MCIU, the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit, for a map amendment to use that site for educational purposes. And that is has been reviewed by the county. We have their recommendations. They think overall that they would recommend in favor of it. It's still being processed in the review phase by the Township Planning Commission, and it's scheduled for the October 13th or the April 13th meeting. Anyone who's interested, of course, please come. And it'll be discussed. It's been on the prior 2 Planning Commission meetings. And it may well be that the Planning Commission will elect to make a recommendation relative to that. It's a map amendment for about 5 acres from LI Limited Industrial to institutional purposes. Questions on that one? You won't be seeing that soon, but it is a prospective action item in the next few months. The next, there are two. The next potential map and text amendment is 1500 Pembroke Parkway. Tom, you referring to this. This is a very early introduction. We received a letter of request for a zoning hearing. When we receive those, we like to inform the commissioners, and through the commissioners in this agenda, the public who read the agenda of a potential land use matter. This is still in the very early township review phase. It has not even been scheduled for the planning commission yet. When it is, don't hesitate to call my office, or those of you that would have an interest, it'll be available online. I would say at the earliest that this particular item would be on the May agenda, and perhaps not even until June. It's a text and map amendment for about 4 acres along the Pembroke Parkway. The idea was that the applicants observed that the comprehensive plan had included a radius around the Pembroke station, which included this vacant site. It's a site with no buildings on it. It's vacant. And their idea, their proposal is that the township consider that this become a live, work / walkability mini residential project, and the township has agreed to at least consider it. I have no idea how the board will decide to go with the actual proposal, but this is what has been proposed by the applicant. It equates to about 44 or 45 dwelling units based on the density that they have indicated they would be limited to. The next questions about that one?
And
Yes,
when
Catherine.
you say dwelling units, I'm sorry, this one. When you say dwelling units, you're not saying that all of them will be residential.
No, they all would. This particular proposal would be residential. There would be a little fitness center, kind of like a community building to support the little compound of residential development on the one on Pembroke Parkway.
Okay.
Now, they would be 44 or 45. I haven't seen the final number yet, dwelling units.
Okay.
Again, this is months away from you actually seeing it for an action item point of view. The next 4 items are zoning hearing board matters. The first one you've heard me talk about before. It has been at the request of the applicant owner continued until April. So we'll actually be talking about that at the next board meeting in the event they continue to want to be heard by the zoning hearing board. The next 3 are new. And by the way, just for those of you that are following along, the one that has been continued is zoning hearing board number 22-02 at 621 West Prospect Avenue. It was a variance and an appeal of a zoning interpretation relative to an accessory use. That has been put on hold and may or may not go forward. It would not go forward until at the earliest the April zoning hearing meeting, April 26th. The next 3 are current applications and will be heard in 2 weeks. These will be heard at the March zoning hearing board meeting. I think it's March 26th. So the first is 1346 East Prospect Avenue. Sanctuary Methodist Church is proposing a sign variance to size, and then as a part of that variance, they would elect to include LED messaging, which is permitted. What is not permitted is the flip rate that they're asking for, which is a 2-minute flip rate instead of 4 hours, more rapid, and some minor applications relative to the lines and the color of the messaging. So in order for them to obtain that sign permit, they need to first go to the zoning hearing board. My suggestion would be that this kind of an application is one that we'd like to have you at least consider having the solicitor attend, just because of its potential impact on other similar kinds of applications. Next, 2204-110 Weber's, it's for a request, it's a corner property. Corner properties are faced with the unusual circumstance of having two front yards. So in this instance, applicant is requesting a variance for a shed to be constructed in one of the two front yards because it's a corner property. And it's a dimensional variance because of that, and that will be also on the next zoning hearing. I think that's fairly routine and not a particular item of interest. Yes, Catherine.
When I drove by both of these properties and I have questions about both. So when I was in front of it, they're not talking about where the house is. It's like right next to it. That's where they're talking about putting the shed.
Actually, the shed exists.
Oh, right where.
So you probably
was
saw
right-
it and didn't realize it. So it's behind the garage. It was built without a permit. Those things happen. Not every resident is aware of the procedures for the township. We observed it as a violation and notified the applicant. The applicant very, very quickly filed for a dimensional relief to permit so it's an existing building.
Okay.
That actually you would have seen when you go out there. It's too close to Marlin's Lane. There's Weber on one side and Marlin's on the other.
Yeah, I saw it. It was kind of.
Yeah.
And for the next one on Shearer Street, the backyard backs up to like grass, like trees, and is that where they're talking about putting the
The backyard probably backs up against part of the township property. It's over in the Clover Crest development. Yeah, we've been getting, actually, we've always had a couple of these kinds of applications, one or two per year. We've had more lately, and they're typically for requests to have an in-law suite, AKA related party, a separate dwelling unit. So the ordinance currently permits a second dwelling unit for a related party, provided that it is contained within the current footprint or framework of the existing dwelling. The idea is that the zoning ordinance would not encourage the construction of second dwelling units. So in order to create a second dwelling unit outside of the principal building, we've had a few of these, zoning relief would be necessary from the zoning hearing board. So that would be a relief, a variance. This proposal is for parents of the current owners to have their own separate bedroom, dining area in a separate, not even a wing, a separate detached building behind the current building. I think it would also, the use would be shared with a pool building, a pool cabana kind of building. So that's what's proposed. And again, that's a little unusual. It might be something you'd like to have the solicitor keep an eye on. I'm not saying you would be opposed to it, but it is the kind of, so decades ago when the in-law suite text was created for this Upper Gwynedd, the idea was to not forbid them, but only so long as the in-law suite was contained within a principal, within the footprint, within basically what exists. And as needs have changed over the decades and more families have wanted to perhaps stay in the township longer and have a related party, a son, a daughter, an uncle, a parent, live with them, they have decided that the space that would be appropriate for that in-law suite arrangement is greater than they can, that will fit inside the existing unit. So they then need a variance in order to construct it outside. I should hasten to add that any time that this kind of a proposal is received, whether it comes to the zoning hearing board or it's approved administratively, that means that they don't need any variances. They're always required to sign a related party agreement. The document is a document that was prepared, the draft of which was prepared by Lauren at the solicitor's office, and they sign and record the document that when the in-law, when the related party leaves the premises, the kitchen, what makes it a separate or separate dwelling unit, is removed. kitchenette, cooking facilities, kitchen is removed when the related party leaves the property. So that's always a case in Upper, has been for a number of years. Yes,
Yeah, so
Ruth.
that means that it can never be a rental if you take out the
Thank you.
kitchen.
And so that's exactly what it means. The idea is that it would not evolve somehow by plan or by accident into a separate rental unit. It is intended to accommodate a family member, a related party, and when that related party is no longer on the premises in that building, the kitchen is removed. Of course, the building still stays, but would have to be used as part of the single-family home. The fact that this is detached and not a wing or an extension or an addition to the house makes it a little different in that regard. I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm simply saying that it's unusual in that respect. It's in the back of the house.
Behind the pool.
Exactly correct. So that might or might not be something you'd like to have the solicitor keep an eye on as well. Thank you. Questions on these? Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, Van. Isaac, you're up next.
Thanks, Sandra. Our report for this month is included with the agenda packet this evening. There's a few land development projects currently in construction, and we have our inspectors out there regularly with the different projects going on. Three things we wanted to just highlight for this month. One is the road program for this year. It was authorized to advertise a little bit ago. The final edits per liquid fuels requirements, I should say, which seem to evolve each year, are being finalized, and that will be out for public bid very shortly to have that hopefully before you in a meeting coming up for a recommendation to award, and we'll have that underway. Another item to mention is our Monco 2040 grant that we did receive last year, and it includes the illuminated signage for stop signs and pedestrian crossings around the township. An illuminated sign is required to have a PennDOT permit. It goes on the list of signals that the township maintains, and PennDOT, I guess, has that list, even though we maintain it. So that process is being completed, and that's the last requirement before we can have those installed and start to, you'll see those put into place. And lastly, just this time of year, I refer to as grant season. A lot of the grants that come out annually do come out at the beginning of the year into the spring. They're due this month, as we'll see on tonight's agenda, as well as into April and May. So we continue to see which ones come out, how they apply to things that we have budgeted for the year, and hopefully we're able to have some favorable grant awards that can help offset some of the township costs. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
No questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Moving on to President Hull's section in Finance, Personnel, and Administration. Items 9, 10, and 11 would be ripe for consideration for the consent agenda at the next meeting. Okay, then we get to item 12. It's an approval of Resolution 05-2022, which we would formally go over next week. Hopefully some reps from the library will be here, and we will recognize April 3rd through 9th as National Library Week. Up next, item 13 is an approval of a resolution allocating funding for the underground storage tank project in the amount of $240,000 plus 198, give and take some change. So this is an interesting scenario that we're being faced with, and I think every business is being faced with right now with supply chain demand issues. So we had budgeted for this project in 2021, we put it out to bid in 2021, and then we hit a supply chain issue wall with an 11-month wait for the actual tank. So we weren't able to complete the project in 2021. We didn't think that the construction would actually be happening in 2022, but we got an awesome phone call from the contractor saying we have a cancellation on another order for the same tank that you want, so we could install it in March or April, which we're thrilled about because replacing this tank is a DEP priority. They asked us to replace it. It holds our fuel storage here on the township complex. So we're asking the board to allocate a budget amendment to allow for that money. That $240,000 was budgeted in 2021. It went into the general fund reserve. Where it sits now, we're just asking you to take it out, allocate it so we can complete the project this year. Are there any questions? Okay, great. That'll be voted on. Excuse me. It's officially March, the time when I start losing my voice like crazy due to allergies. So thanks for bearing with me. The next up is approval resolution 09-2022, allocating funding for projects related to the WIP diversion. And Deanna, for the record, for the roll call, Rebecca Mason is also present, our director of the wastewater treatment plant. Oh no, my link's not working. One sec. Megan, can you pull up the presentation while I try to get my links to work on my computer? Thank you. Okay, is this gonna work? Turn it on. My millennial assistant manager is helping this old Gen Xer. Okay, so WIP 2.0, that's what we're calling this budget amendment request. So just for a bit of project history, the project planning for WIP began in 2010 or even earlier than that, with our plan to divert flow from Towamencin Municipal Authority to our plant. We spent tons of time planning and engineering through several different boards of commissioners. Initial estimates were around 26 million in expenditures. Construction began in 2019 and was completed in October of 2021, which brought over 30% more flow to our plant to be processed. 2 new pump stations were installed and over 6 miles of force main. The project creates environmental benefits for our community as well as economical benefits, as we no longer have to pay TMA for the flow that we were utilizing going to their plant. It's now coming to ours, so it's less than a payment that we make to the TMA. So why are we now coming back to talk about WIP 2.0? There have been some unanticipated challenges with the new flow, working with important plant technology, namely the biomag system. The flow is the wastewater treatment plant in general, overall, which I've learned over my almost 3 years as manager here, is a very biological process. So it can be hard to exactly predict things like exact sludge makeup and things like that that the engineers have to use to plan projects. Treatment staff have identified modifications that need to be made in order to accommodate the new flow and maintain effluent quality in accordance with our PA DEP permit limits. You can tell that Rebecca edited this slide for me because it's very technical and detailed. So the biggest portion of the $3.4 million budget amendment that we're looking for is over $2 million that we're looking to put towards increased biomag capacity. So the sludge we're receiving since the diversion has a higher nutrient concentration than initially anticipated. This means we are creating more waste that must have the magnetite that we use in the biomag process recovered, and before we can haul the sludge out. So we use this biomag in the process, and then we have to remove the biomag and then allow the sludge to go. We will have to continue, as a result of WIP, we've had increased sludge hauling. So where we used to have about 3 trucks, now we have 5. And we're hoping through a series of projects, not necessarily this one, that will reduce that amount of hauling. The biomag capacity increase now will be utilized to basically buy Rebecca and her staff additional time. So before the WIP project, we had about 3 days worth of time. So if something broke in the biomag, we had 3 days to fix it before we would back up all over. Now we're at between 7.5 hours and 12 hours. So that's way too close to cut it for our staff and for us. And it was unanticipated due to the biological makeup of the sludge. You can cut me off anytime I say something that's, I've had a lot of tutoring from Rebecca. So in short, we really do need to bulk up the capacity of the biomag system. We initially didn't think we were going to have to, but now that we're actually live and have the sludge flowing, it needs to happen. We didn't feel that we could delay that any further just because, as you know, we're coming into the rainy season. We've had increased storms and rain events, and the last thing we want is to violate our PA DEP permit because something breaks in the system and we only have 7 hours to replace it. Other smaller projects that we're asking for in the budget amendment are $100,000 worth of electrical improvements at the pump stations to enhance alarms and functionality. $15,200 for a manhole demo project that was requested by Tillmanson after the project was completed. A $10,000 odor control issue we're having on Garfield since the force main was installed. We're trying to improve that for our residents. This one is a really important one. So getting into the weeds a bit, we have these effluent screens. They keep jamming up. Our staff has to don full Tyvek suits every week to clean out these screens, which used to be something that happened like 3 times a year. So we need to boost the water pressure in the building to be able to allow the hoses to clean these screens instead of our staff having to manually do it because it takes hours upon hours. This is another unintended consequence that we couldn't predict. It has to do with the grinding of the rags, as we call it, in the system. And we're also looking to allocate funding for a part-time deputy director to increase help handle some of the increased workload as a result of increasing the flow to the plant by 30%. So that is my presentation, and I would like to open it up to the Board of Commissioners if you all have any questions for me. That was a lot that I just talked about. I know you have information in your packet about this, so no questions. Okay, so that's why I asked Rebecca to be here. What is biomag? Come on up to the mic if you don't mind, Rebecca, so the people at home can hear you. I sort of know, but my explanation would be like a 3rd grader, and you're going to get like a master's degree explanation from Rebecca.
All right, so biomag is a process that allows us to process a lot more sludge a lot more quickly through the process. So what it does is it increases our plant capacity without having to build extra tankage. So basically when we have these peaks of 30 MGD, when our normal flow is 3 MGD, it allows us to handle those peaks without actually violating our permit. So it really helps us maintain our permit and our effluent quality. It actually makes the sludge heavier, so it settles faster. It's iron filings, which is why we have to recover that from the process before we send the sludge out. We can't send those iron filings to other plants for processing. They don't have the equipment like we do. So that is biomag in short.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Maybe a slide before that, it talked about the software issue. Can you explain that a little bit? Or something that's not reading the software with the new.
Trying to think which.
Is your mic on? He can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, go back to the, nope, one more.
Might be looking at that. Oh, okay.
Unanticipated challenge with new flow working with important plant technology. What exactly does that
Oh,
mean?
I think we
That's
meant the
in
biomag
reference to the
technology.
biomag.
Yeah.
I thought you meant there's new software because you had.
No,
No,
it's not software, it's a process, but it's a very technologically complex process.
Yes, so there are actually only 2 plants in the state of Pennsylvania that have biomag. It's us and I believe East Norton, Plymouth. So.
Which is an awesome process. It's just, we had some unanticipated changes. And the last thing I wanted to point out to the board as well is, you know, our initial estimates were 26 million for the project. We came in at about 22 million. So even with this budget amendment, we're still along the lines of the original budget for WIP. It's just, these unanticipated changes really need to be dealt with. And there will be more to come at budget time. Rebecca has a few more projects. One namely is a project to thicken the sludge, which will allow us to reduce the amount of trucks that we have visiting the plant, and thus save us a lot of money because our sludge hauling is around $150,000. Is that what? You don't know? We don't know.
I really don't.
Anyway, once we have that project scoped, we'll give you a good ROI on it. But I'm just telling you, there's going to be additional efficiencies that we're going to try to make with this process.
And those additional efficiencies will definitely save us money in the long run. It'll be a very good rate of return.
So in terms of the manual piece that the men or that your staff is working on,
Effluent screens.
Effluent screens that they're cleaning off, would that also be working in terms of increasing like the equipment that they're using to do that? So you're spending more money like on outfits and bio
It's
hazard?
Yeah, it's mostly biohazard containment. It's also mostly man hours when we
Okay.
have to take one of those screens down for service. Like Sandra said, we usually only do that a couple times a year for normal preventative maintenance. We're doing it weekly. And when it's down for 2 to 3 days at a time. And I'm talking full 8-hour days that I have my entire maintenance staff dedicated to doing that for 3 days straight. So that means we can't be doing other preventative maintenance items that need to be done.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? No?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Sandra, maybe you could
Yes.
explain how this money is going to be replenished in the reserve? How there's a
Oh,
plan?
thank you for putting that out. I finally got my link working. So we looked at ways to finance this portion of the project, and our finance director, we have two right now, Dave Brill, suggested it might be a good idea to take a loan from our own general fund reserve to fund the wastewater treatment fund, thus resulting in no interest for this loan that we're taking from our own general fund reserve. So we have over 13 million in reserve. We would take this 3.4 and change and pay it back through a transfer each year to the general fund reserve from the wastewater treatment plant fund. It would be a 10-year reimbursement schedule.
Great. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, I was gonna go through all the items in this section. Okay. So next up is approval of the temporary telecommunication policy. You have this information in your packet. Over the past 2 years, during COVID, we have allowed our employees at different times to work from home. This is only employees who have, standard desk jobs based on the job duties of the individual. We're looking to make this a regular occurrence, 1 day per week max, for approved employees that need approval from their department head and me. This is the way the modern world works now in the workplace. Most workplaces offer work from home opportunities. So we're looking to be a flexible, modern workplace for our employees. Since we've made it work for the past 2 years with limited disruption to residents, we think we can continue to make that work. And of course, it would be at my discretion if we found that we were not able to serve the residents. Of course, we would not allow it any further. Next up is another policy change for our personnel manual, and this is to allow a different rate of call-in overtime pay. So currently, if our public works staff or park or wastewater staff get called in for an emergency that requires less than an hour of work, we pay them for the full hour for the inconvenience of coming in. We did some research and looked at what neighboring communities are paying, and most of the neighboring communities have a 2-hour minimum for that overtime call-in. So if you come in for less than 2 hours, you get paid for 2 hours. We did an analysis and found that the impact on our budget would be minimal. We did like a worst case analysis where if every employee that gets overtime that's non-uniform had to get called in 6 times for less than 2 hours, it would be a 4% increase to overall overtime rates. So we think it would be a minimal impact to the budget and a wonderful impact for our employees who are always available to us 24/7 on Christmas, on Easter, on all of their holidays, all of their weekends, like this past weekend. Not that that was less than a 2-hour call-in, but there's lots of times where our staff just have to drop everything and come in, which is part of the nature of the job, but we want to be competitive. It's been increasingly difficult to hire employees. I know every business is also facing that. We face those same challenges and want to be a workplace that people want to work for. Okay. Last up is a decision item. So Commissioner Hull, I'm going to pass it back to you. And then I did want to make it open for any public comment or questions that the public have about this whole section that we just went over.
No public comments. Fred? Sure. Come to the mic, please, and say your name and address again for us.
Fred Hinkinado, 2 Clover Drive. Sandra, just back to your point, about employees, 1 at home, 1 day at home and 4 in the office, yada yada. How do you have measurements in place that residents, if they are affected, how do you know? Like, is it arbitrary? I mean, if I can't come see, say, you or somebody, and it doesn't happen because of whatever, and the resident's disappointed, or doesn't feel they're being treated the way they do. How do you measure that?
I have never found that the residents in this community have an issue with calling me and telling me if they find our
And
staff to
I
be.
don't mean to point you out
No,
specifically.
no, it's okay. The staff will, in general, when any resident has any complaint in our community, they let me know if they didn't get what they needed from the department head or the employee that they're working for. So we have not had any complaints over the past, actually, we very rarely have complaints, which is wonderful, but we haven't had any complaints about anyone having trouble getting in touch
I
with staff.
suspect more people are going to be actually out and about more now that COVID's kind of waning.
Well, we were open during all of
No,
COVID.
but I'm
Yeah.
saying now it's, people are a little more.
Yeah,
willing to
and
come out.
again, I don't want to misconstrue. This is not every employee. This
No,
is
I
like a handful of
understand.
employees who do jobs that aren't that resident facing. For example, like finance clerks, it's very infrequent that a finance clerk, like that you would come per se and
Know
ask the
about
question.
being a finance clerk.
Yeah.
If I
Way
may,
back when.
we recently had a resident that wanted to meet with me and the Parks and Rec director. It was her work from home day, but she came in, and we will make arrangements like that. We'll never say, well, she's not in today, can't meet with her.
No,
We'll always make it that
I
we're
wasn't saying that you
available.
wouldn't. I'm saying,
Yeah.
what if there's an issue? Like how do you measure the fact that there might be an issue is my question. I know you're doing the best you can. I'm not
Yep.
suggesting otherwise. But I'm always about measurements. How do you measure stuff? I think that's how we by measuring, we understand how well we're doing. And we should always be under that. And I think we all understand that in this room.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I know I went over a lot. There will be another chance for all of this at next week's meeting. So, okay, Commissioner Hall, for the next item is a decision item due to time constraints.
Right. It is the approval of Nathan Crittenden, our new finance director, as the voting delegate to the tax collection committee for the township. Do we have a motion to approve Nathan Crittenden as the voting delegate to the tax collection committee for the township?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any board comments? Do we have any public comments? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Nate, you're in. You get to go to the tax meetings. All right, so next up, I will turn the meeting over to my illustrious colleagues from the fire department. This is on, I think. Yep, it's on. So you are in for your presentation.
Good evening, everybody. For those at home, Eric Geiger, I'm the fire chief here. I appreciate the opportunity to present to the Board of Commissioners this evening. Rather monumental event in our history and the future of the community as well. So we'll start, and I'll brief through the slides. If anybody has a particular question about any slide or things that we go through here, feel free to please stop me. Am I going down here? There we go. Okay. So the presentation here is the purpose here is to convey the current building situation with regards to the Upper Gwynedd Township Fire Department. All right. That way the Board of Commissioners has a full understanding of exactly where we're at in the current day, and then the understanding that the fire department is looking to the future of this community. The support, we're going to display some information that will support plans for action items for moving forward with that purpose. So just some brief history on our current building I'm sure everybody knows, but on Garfield Avenue. The original building, as you look at the fire department, is what is now considered the hall, and that's the left part of the firehouse. That was built in 1942. Moved from a building that was down the street at 2nd and Garfield, was the original West Point Volunteer Fire Company. And like I said, 1942, we moved into that. In 63, we built what is now the current engine room. As you're looking at the firehouse, it's the portion to the right there. All right. And then in 72, there was a small gear room that was put in. Subsequently, as the department grew over the years, obviously bunker gear also got bigger and more cumbersome. We needed room for that. In 1997, we put the addition on, which is the back portion of the firehouse, which is the taller part of the building. We kind of just added on to the existing part there in direct connection to increased calls, which required increased apparatus and things like that, and that's why that came in there. The current property, which the fire department, and I speak to about the fire department, we have two entities, a relief association and the fire department. It's all, the Relief Association is just an entity which provides the ability for the state to support us through financially. But the relief is able to own property just like the fire department's able to own. So the parcels on there, on that property that we own is just shy of 2 acres, right? The 668, which is the actual firehouse, right? And 668 is the house next to the firehouse. 660 is the firehouse itself. And 654 is the relief-owned rental property next to the firehouse. At the time of this, the most current assessment that I could get for those properties and the values is just north of $1 million. Whoop. I think we're off on that. So that's the current history of the building. The building deficiencies as we sit now, the infrastructure, it's built on 1942 bones, and it has 1942 bones, and it certainly displays them. We have issues with the roof as well. We have, obviously time has evolved, safety protocols and things have evolved. NFPA, the governing body for fire service, has become wise to things like carcinogens and things like that. Our firehouse is definitely not compliant with those NFPA standards. Obviously, being grandfathered in for years, but it's the time that we are, needing to think about those things as we move forward. Apparatus clearance and apparatus sheltering. There's a picture on here you can see, and I believe all the commissioners have been in there. We can't open one door and open the other door of the truck next to it because they're just too close. It's not uncommon for me to be able to run out multiple trucks at the same time. It takes some consideration and planning for the firemen that are running up there because of that reasons. All right. Lack of space is just in general. As we think about this and as we presented this, we can't be thinking about 2022. We're in fact thinking about 2052, right? 30 to 50 to even 75 years down the line. And what does the fire service look like to Upper Gwynedd Township? And living in day quarters as well. That is a very real consideration in conjunction with that future thought of 50 to 75 years from now. So, and that's really throwing me off. So infrastructure, specific to the infrastructure, can you move that, Megan? Go down. Keep down. No, I'm sorry. Up. Keep going. There you go, right there. Okay, so as we build these out, I built out some of the issues as we're going to talk in here. The infrastructure and the deficiency of the roof continues to fail. Every rainstorm, we have buckets out there like hodgepodge collecting water from the ceiling. We have spent considerable money. Just the design back in the day when that was built, it was poorly designed, but we're stuck with the flat roof. The heating and cooling systems, we put Band-Aids on over the years. In fact, Willard has assisted with that. I think he ran out the door, but Willard's assisted with that over the years. It's still, it's consistent with the 1967 update or renovation. That's when those heating and cooling systems were valid back then. So we do also have an underground storage tank, just the same problem that the township is having. I'm sure if DEP came in, they would be having concerns with that as well. The exterior facade, that's old on the 1997 edition and is peeling off and falling down. The front apron is cracking. Clearly, trucks got heavier as the years went on, right? So back in 1942, when it was a horse and buggy or whatever it was back then, it was much lighter than what we're running across now. So we are listed in the township as a fallout shelter or shelter for residents should something happen. And that would require an emergency generator, obviously, for backup electric and power and stuff. And that's just not up to code or speed at this point in time to be that. And because basically ADA did not exist back when all these things were going on, we're just clearly not in compliance with that. Safety wise, the clearance of the fire trucks, I talked about that. They're going into NFPA and the carcinogen issues. A lot of the fire departments that you see out there nowadays, they have systems which connect to the exhaust hoses and go up and expel the exhaust out of the apparatus bay. We tend to eat and affectionately call the smoke eaters for firefighters. Well, we do that in our firehouse as well. We'd rather not do that, and that's one of the things that we that's considered here at this point. The easement distance from Garfield Avenue, we're kind of grandfathered in. I'm sure Van would have a better understanding of just where we should be in regards to that, but we're not in compliance with that. Egress issues is, that's a topic of discussion, which we'll go into, a reason why we're presenting this, in a residential neighborhood versus not in a residential neighborhood, and egress issues in order to get to different places throughout the township. The current floor was put in back in 2008 on the anniversary year and was supposed to be slip resistant. Well, they lied when they put that in, because it is definitely not slip resistant. The separated gear storage area, that's part of, again, something that comes in with the NFPA regulations and things, is to anything that gets in contact with a fire or any sort of biohazard or something like that should not be stored where people hang out and where people sit and eat lunch and dinner and that sort of thing. So and we don't have an actual decon area inherent to our department or our property. So we make do with the back, parking lot and things like that, which, it works, but it's not the future or the right answer. So, and then a couple other things there. The station is monitored by a smoke alarm, but it's not sprinklered in any regard. So there's the pictures that I was talking about, the apparatus clearances and things. Both those doors, it's the driver and the officer in the truck to know not to pull out when the other one's open, in the front and vice versa. So it's kind of to show that how close it is. So. The ability to conduct regular routine preventative maintenance and things like that on the trucks. We can't do that. Those trucks and every fire truck out there, the cab lifts up and goes down forward. We're not able to do that in station, inclement weather, things like that. We have to pull it out on the front apron, which is fine if it's not inclement weather and things like that. But at most firehouses that you see, newer ones that are going in, they have ceiling clearances enough to support that ability to properly maintain your equipment on an annual basis. So, the double bay doors for us, when that 67 rendition renovation was put on, or addition was put on back then, it was intended to house one truck per bay, and now we put two per bay because of the needs of the township. So. Lack of space, just that's an all-around thing. We are, for lack of a better term, bursting at the seams. I'll credit the atmosphere that we have and the people and the volunteers and the number of volunteers that we have coming into the department. I have no more space to put gear racks and things like that, and we're getting to the point where we are almost having to put two sets of bunker gear in one rack because we have so many members out there, and it just doesn't exist in what we have now. And there's really nowhere to rearrange in order to get more in there for that point. And, we built, thanks to the township last year and the VRP program, we built an exercise area, which is clearly a top priority for us in our line of business to stay in shape and things like that. So having that on our property is a big deal and a big bonus for the members in order to want to stay in shape and all that. We came and did something and put it in underneath the garage, and it works now. where you get 2, maybe 3 people at most in there, but the future, again, thinking about how this fire service is going to look in Upper Gwynedd Township moving forward. So, and the exercise equipment and things like that. So, can you help me out, Megan? So living in day quarters is a big deal. As I talk, and I've mentioned many times now about the 50 to 75-year plan. Currently in 2022, and as far as I'm concerned, as long as I will be chief, we'll be a 100% volunteer department. I can promise you in the 28 years I've been in this business that in 50 years it will not be, okay? It will be some variation of a combination or a fully paid department, and we just have to understand that because volunteerism is just not happening the way it happened for the last, almost 3 decades that I've been involved with it, and even back further. There's plenty of studies across the state to indicate that. So that goes directly tied to the living in day quarters. This becomes, at some point in time in the future, a combination or a paid department that requires the staff to be able to sleep there. Shifts in the fire service are almost all the time 24 hours. Sometimes they do 48 72s where they work 2 days straight and they're off for 3 days. There's a number of variations, but they all include the firemen sleeping there in the long run, right? There are certain departments that touch our borders that are combination departments already that do not have overnight combination, but that's because they supplement, and that's when the volunteers are mostly available. But in 2-3 decades, that's where it's going to drop off and it's going to require the overnight stuff. So living quarters is a big deal. We need to be in compliance with several issues there, that of which we are not in compliance at all. Again, with the help of the township and the current facility, we built a home office, which I encourage members of the department that are able to work from home, kind of have that home office. They now have a firehouse office. They have there's 3 individual offices in there that they can close the door, have a conference, do whatever they need to do. There's specific drops for computers and things like that that they have there. It's 3 and it's there, and it definitely fits and with today's current situation. Again, not something that's a long-term solution for the future here. So what does this mean, and how are we going to plan for the future now? I think in Greg's and my administration or time here with the fire department, we'd be extremely naive to not consider that, right? It's not right for us to kind of go, this is good now, but we're going to walk out the door and I'm going to retire in 8 years and it's the next guy's problem. So we need to consider that now and be that vehicle for change in the future. And Apparatus isn't getting smaller. It's kind of right now in the current decade-ish is staying stable, but again, still much bigger than it was back in 1997 or actually even prior to that, 1967, when we put the last addition on there. The growing township population, residential population is directly correlated to public safety and a number of calls that go up, not in a bad or negative way. It's just that's what it is. And as we move into the future, the zoning regulations and the fire marshals and all that require sprinklers and things like that. That increases fire service responses, which is directly correlated to bringing more staff or having staff then in the future. NFPA compliance in a volunteer department, NFPA compliance is all but impossible to achieve complete compliance, right? But just like anything else, we strive to be compliant with everything we possibly can. It would be a beyond full-time job for me to do that at this point. But as we move and think about the future, it's definitely something that we would use as a guideline to ensure that we are meeting those compliance issues in the future. And then ease of access goes to directly the reason why, and then the motion or the Board of Commissioners action item is where, right? Where does this go and what does this do for the future of Upper Gwynedd Township? And the Emergency Shelter and Operations Center, definitely something that should be considered and tied directly to the fire department. The Connor and Jeff being EMC, that's directly connection to the fire service and how we work together. So should definitely be something that considered in conjunction with the fire department and the police department. So apparatus, like I talked about, heavier, the trend and what we want to see, because just like in most big vehicles, backing up is more of a problem than is going forward, right? As we saw, I have like inches on the driver's side of the tower currently, literally inches for them to pull in and out. So the trend moving forward is drive-through bays. That's what fire departments are doing, because you just drive around, drive right through, and it's much safer that way. And individuals responding to the station, through a neighborhood, obviously the village, we're very tied to the village. We have everything that we do and are saying, and everything that we talk about is being in the village. But is that what the future is? And is that what the commissioners and the township believe should be where it should be in 50 to 75 years from now? We do I'm going to say a very good job about being considerate about the neighbors on Garfield Avenue, for early morning and late night calls. But I grew up behind the train station in Lansdale, and I stopped hearing it. I couldn't tell you, and I think Catherine has said that she don't even hear it anymore. And that's probably the case for most of the residents there, that they just don't hear us anymore, because we don't usually hit the sirens or air horns or anything like that until we're out past on one of the peripheral streets. But again, still a consideration, right, where we're going to be and what we're going to do in the future. So this is kind of an estimate. The beginning parts from 90 all the way down. I took a percentage increase and especially as we talk about increased residential neighborhoods and things like that. In 2035, the average trend increase on all the rest of those years puts us at 18,600 residents in the township. Now, the considerable part, or the most notable part of this slide, is it's not going down, right? That's the thing. We're going to continue to go up, and that's that's just the nature of things as municipalities evolve. They're directly related to public safety and how that works for us. So, that all gets tied into the fact of, again, what do we look like in 50 years? I beat the in-station staffing part about this. The increasing dependency on volunteer members. To note, I started when I was 14 in Lansdale, and I can remember being the first kid at the door waiting because I wasn't allowed to get in there. And I remember seeing like 5 or 6 people run out of the reporter back then that were members of the Lansdale Fire Department, and the reporter would just let them go. The reality of 2022 is businesses don't do that, right? So daytime responses is a significant concern for volunteer fire services across not just Montgomery County, but the state, and I'm sure the nation. So how does that move into the future? What does that look like? Live-in volunteers. We run a very successful live-in program in that house next door. I have 4 members that live in there rent-free and utilities-free and everything. They just are very dedicated, and they owe 40 hours to the fire department on a weekly basis, and that works really well right now. They're 21, 22, 23-year-olds. I wish I had it when I was that age. At that point, I'd be living in there too. But they get older, they get married and things like that, and they move out. So that's a challenge to keep that going, which we've been successful, but something that cannot be considered a guarantee every day, or a guarantee in the future. I mean, so is it a live-in paid volunteers? Is it a paid volunteer? Like, how do we stand moving forward, and what does that look like? And then all those things directly tied to adequate living, sleeping quarters that would be able to support that. So as the department has gone over the last 60 years or so, we got members and...
Can I stop you for 1 second? Can you go back to the previous slide?
Sure.
Because you missed the first bullet, and I think that's really important in terms of not just fires.
So the fire department, has... back in years and years and decades ago, we were there for fires, and then that was it. As we move into the future and things evolve, we're called for not just fires, right? And it's not my cat stuck in the tree thing, because I've never seen a skeleton in a tree of a cat, but it's boat rescue because we have, that significant concern here. It's hazardous material response. It's vehicle rescues. There's so many more emergencies and a more diverse, call volume that the fire department is receiving that gets directly tied to a lot of things, which most notably to us is the training aspect, right? Which that goes to connection on the drain on volunteers and as we move forward. So we are also very cognizant and supportive within the fire department of the medical concerns or medical emergencies throughout Upper Gwynedd Township as well. We're doing a lot to support that even more with our QRS program as we move forward. So, the nature of having natural disasters or mass casualty events is nobody wants them. I don't want them, but we have to be able to plan for them. And that's, with Connor and Jeff and Chief Duffy, we have to be the ones that think about this for the township to be able to understand that. And they're all, directly tied to how we function and work as a department in the facility that we have to support that work environment. So the members in red are the active responders. We consider the active responders the ones that put bunker gear on and go out to fire calls, right? They're the ones that don't care about sleep, and at 2 o'clock in the morning when the phone goes off, we're out there no matter what. We also have significant others, husbands, wives, boyfriend, girlfriends, sons, daughters, things like that can't necessarily or don't want to do that, but they want to support the fire department in other means. And we certainly welcome them throughout, which I will note that my son was voted into the firehouse tonight. So that's pretty significant. The fact that, the members that are willing to help is going up is great. But obviously you have to be a firefighter. You have to be the one that goes in the building. It's not like that, obviously, in a volunteer scenario, right? So that is kind of ebb and flows, and I have no rubric to figure out, I'm going to have 27 firefighters next year or whatever, right? So it's constantly just something that as the deputy chief and president and the chief, we need to consider and think about, which, puts us into the position of, hey, let's do this. So NFPA compliance, I'm not going to bore you with all these standards. We get into the future, we're going to be living and breathing in all these documents. Sandra and anybody that will be working on this project should it evolve, we'll get intimately familiar with these things. They are very verbose and very government written. So Dan, I hope you're up for a challenge. So it brings it to the question of what I perceive, and as talking to the committee, because we formed a committee which I'm affectionately calling the New Building Committee, which is comprised of 6 members of the department, ranging from my oldest member who's 75 or 6, something like that, Mark Methley, to one of my youngest members at 20 years old, and all in between, because we need the guys that have the history and the knowledge, and we also need the guys that have the future thinking and stuff like that on a project like this. So, and the first question we always kept circling back to is where? Right? Where is the firehouse, or where would it be or need to be in the next 50 to 75 years, right? A lot of the things that we think about are right now is ease of access for volunteers, right? The best place that we can get to with the membership that we have and things like that. There's a very real thought process in city departments to maintain fire stations or firehouses in residential communities, right? There's a real tie to a community relations event there, and for the most part, everybody loves the fire department, right? So if the doors are open, and during the summer, ours are almost always open, people can just walk up. They love fire trucks, things like that. So being in a residential neighborhood is a very real thing. Conversely, if you're in the process or in the business of trying to figure out where the best place is, do you want to stay in a residential neighborhood? What's the impact to the residents in that neighborhood? Does do your increasing call volume, does it bother them? Things like that, right? So there's all these things that we started thinking about, and we're like, okay, well, where's it going to be? So how do we do this, and what do we look at that as we move forward? So recent projects, yeah, I'm sure everybody has driven around and seen some of these incredible projects. Center Square, being the very closest one, incredible project right there on Skipback Pike. Bless you.
Bless you.
Out there on Skipback Pike, bless you. They maintained on the same property that they had for years and just moved it back off the street. But the point of this slide being that look at similar projects, all of which we consider to be incredible firehouses, which every one of them had the consideration of what they're going to look like and what their municipality is going to look like in the future. And they built a building to accommodate the future and not to accommodate now, right? So how does that impact everybody's concern financially, right? Financially, those numbers on that slide there, in the grand scheme of things, not so terrible. When you talk about or think about what you're doing and what we're talking about. So Limerick, and I didn't put a second one in there, but Limerick is now building a second brand new firehouse in their township that is very similar to this one at right around the 4.5, 5. I think it's just south of 6 actually million that they're doing this one in. So call volumes wise though, super important to realize. Last year I did just south of 600 calls. I fully anticipate, based on mutual aid not contracts, but mutual aid discussions with area fire chiefs and things that have evolved in that process, I'm going to be at every bit of 700 calls this year with ease. The quick math, two fire calls a day being pulled away from the family and things like that. The departments here, that type of building, that type of money, those type of calls, we're right in there with them. So we just threw up some quick, building layouts to see how much space really is considered in the newer stations and things like that, office space, workspace, things like that as you move into the future. Limerick, super nice building, very big, accommodating. They can do everything they want to do in there. Since Jeff is on my committee, Jeff was able to pull some federal buildings, fire stations on like military bases and things like that. Clearly that's a much bigger scale department. However, the point being drive-through bays and workspaces versus living capacity and things like that. Workspaces and living capacity completely away from each other in our current day, and what we have, we're all intertwined. It's all intertwined. So from the front, a very lineal display there, and the thing to note that again, the drive-through bays is a big deal when talking about that. So we sat down and we thought, okay, well, what's the answer? We asked the first question of where's it going to be, and then I forced the committee to kind of turn the table around and think about from the other side, and war game, if you will. And it's on a map. Everybody knows the very almost center of the township, right, is just about Church and Summitown Pike, Allentown and Summitown Pike. Right in there is about the center of the township. If your big thoughts process, if you can be in the center of the township, that's the best place you could be, right? For public safety and ease of egress for the fire service to be able to get everywhere equally as fast, right? So center of the township, these present two or three, sites here on top of our site on the top right there. The Allentown and Summitown Pike facility or site right there, the most central almost, and the largest property that exists, currently owned by Merck, a consideration for a facility in the future. Be honest, in full disclosure, number 2 was always number 4 for the longest time, and over the last several months, since working with Catherine and discussions and the committee, number 4 got bumped up to number 2, and that's our current facility. The current property has a unique entity to it. It's a decent size. With some variance considerations and things like that, it could present a very viable option for the future of fire service in Upper Gwynedd Township. And the number 3 property is Dimazzado's property on West Point Pike. He had mentioned just we have some mutual friends through the fire service, and that they had said how he's looking to sell potential or just considering it, whatever it may be. And I actually sat down and met with them and talked with them about it, and just to get a kind of lay of the land of it. And again, a viable option for the township. What I like about this one, it backs up to the township property. It could potentially back up to or have access to here. That's nice, a complex type idea. Again, what does the commissioners in the township think is a good idea for the future, right? And number 4 is the other side of Allentown Road, closest to the cemetery. Again, Merck-owned property there. I don't know that that's just the way it sits. I don't know that that's actually an option, but we put it on there as being the closest to the center, right, of the township. So big ticket question, right? Funding. What I will start off and tell you with in the big bold capitalized there is that Upper Gwynedd Fire Department is fully committed to the future of the fire service in Upper Gwynedd Township. And when I say fully, that's financially committed as well. We have the 5 parcels there, including the relief house, right? A rough estimate, and I'm not a real estate guy by any stretch of imagination, but I did talk to a couple, and just a rough estimate of that property in itself, the dirt, right about $1.5 million, right? The fire department itself does have financial counts and investments and things like that, which we have the committee and the administration and the e-board have all said that we are very willing to commit to this project because we believe in it that much. Many of those other projects that I displayed before started capital gains funds, right? And I keep, every time I bring it up and talk about it, it's that bulb, thermostat bulb out in front of the fire department and keeps raising, right? That's a means to do that. And then the nice part about the fire department is that because we're not technically a government agency, we apply for those 2% loans, which obviously 2% is a great rate at this point in time. But we can hold up to 2% loans across the board with the fire department at one time. So that's a funding source for this project as well in the future. So these are the resources that we used to think, and I forgot to update that, but the 2012, we also used more recent demographics, right? And that report of the State of the Volunteer Fire Service Report 2018, I think, Sandra, you've seen that, and I may have sent it to all of the board there before. It's a pretty significant report and really is very relevant to the fire service in general as we speak about it. So what does it bring me to? The point of this letter, and it goes back to the question of what we said about where is it, right? And through consideration and discussions with the staff, we decided that it would be best for a third-party neutral entity to do a study of the municipality to say, hey, A versus B or whatever, this is what we recommend with all those things in mind. There are several places out there that do that, several third-party entities, firms that Sandra is looking into or spoken to already. But one of them significantly is the state has the Governor's Center for Local Government Services. They provide multiple different things to local municipalities, one of which is the study of fire and emergency services, anything from regionalization, combination, things like that, to department location, physical studies of the municipality. In order to actually talk to these people, though, they want this letter signed, right? And this letter is just basically saying or says that you as the municipality and the commissioners understand that you want us to talk to them and that they're allowed to talk to us, right? So what is in consideration for the board is just that, the ability or the signature on this letter of intent, which is to discuss or give us the ability as the staff to discuss with them what we are thinking about this project as far as location and things like that. So this goes through and talks about some of the things that they've done and projects that they do. Okay, and then the Board of Commissioners action item, I'm assuming they have already. Was it the first one? Oh, okay. So, you know, I do want to point out, and we went through this whole thing. I've been involved with it, and I can tell you that it has been a discussion for well over a decade with the commissioners and prior administrations and things like that. You know, I really appreciate the, you know, Catherine's support in this project and, you know, wanting to actually bring it to the table for discussion, because we just didn't get there before. Just, oh, you know, we got, you know, different responses and things, but, you know, it's now taken a hold that, okay, let's actually discuss this, right? So, you know, I appreciate that cooperation and partnership with our liaison. As I've said, the issue at hand is where the consideration for 50 to 75 years. So, you know, and right now, based on just signing and having this recommendation, I'm sorry, this Board of Commissioners action item is just to sign that. There's zero impact on the budget because there's that actually is free through the state for start talking and things like that. So that shouldn't be an issue there. So that's our recommendation or hope that the board will consider is to sign that letter of intent to allow us to begin those discussions. Any questions? I went through a lot there.
Thank you for that very thorough presentation.
Yes, it's very thorough.
It may not be the first time I did that. All right.
Thanks, Eric. Oh, there you go. You got his applause. That's true. Thank you. Does anyone on the board have any questions or comments?
Well done.
I appreciate all the time and effort you put into putting this together for us. It's a lot, it absolutely is, but I think we're off to a good start with all this, so we thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh,
May I ask, Fred, you're all right with this? I saw you writing and looking and.
I'm always taking notes.
Yeah.
I actually had a question.
Sure.
The store underground.
Fred, can you come to the mic? Sorry.
And state your
Yeah, why
name
don't
and
you
your
just hold
address,
my hand
please.
up here? Thank you, Van. The underground storage tank, is that an oil tank?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a big no-no. Slide 14, could you scooch that?
I've done it once or twice, but I don't know what slide 14 is.
That had to do with the population growth.
Okay.
That doesn't affect, obviously, the need for this, but like what percentages did you use to project?
So I want to say that it was an average, and don't quote me on the 3.7% or so, but it was an average over all those years. And then as we move forward from 2020, that's where I kept that averaging.
I mean, does it look more like this, or like?
It's a steady incline, just like it displays there. Yeah.
Because I know the 2040 comprehensive plan has a number, which is the question you had before that came out of the, you know, the county and the commissioners working on that. So I was curious how that number looks compared to this number. Does that make any sense?
I can say I did not reference the 2040 comp.
I wouldn't have thought
There's a
so.
number that's it's all.
I guess my point is population growth can be controlled to some extent. I'm not looking at you like you're going to do something about it, but I'm just saying that, you know, we don't necessarily have to be going up 3 or 4% a year. We can control that. So maybe that helps you on a resource perspective.
But I don't think controlling, if I sell my house right now, that's 5 of us moving out and 2 people move back in.
No, I'm not
I mean, we
talking-
can't control it
I'm not
like
talking about
that.
normal population, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, if we build more, is that, I mean, yes,
But I
then it would go
thought
up.
We the commissioners took a stand of having more open space and not building more, so now I'm not.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Population can grow, can increase by, like I just said, my family of 5 moving out, maybe another family of 6 or 7 moving into what we already have.
Sure.
And the single-family homes, the townhomes, and all the different things that we have can play a factor in that. It's not just building, new
Understood, but I
homes.
would expect that building would be more of a percentage increase in population than people moving in and out of homes is what I'm suggesting, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, the slide doesn't cover particularly there. We're accounting for population for people that live in the township, but not for those that travel into the township. I'd be willing to say that there's probably 6,000 to 10,000.
Yes,
people that
I think it's
travel
like 12,000.
into the
Yeah,
business.
right. Good point, thanks. Okay, are there any other questions or comments on this? Okay, we will move along on the agenda. Next up is the approval of an MOU that'll be voted on next week. Oh, geez, I'm really having technical difficulties. Between Upper Gwynedd Township and Police Employee Number 25. Into the planning and zoning section, there will be authorization to amend our chapter regarding sidewalks. So this has come up through a review of our subdivision and land development ordinance. Our current code states that sidewalks will be provided where required, except in areas that the Board of Commissioners allow for a waiver or determine it unnecessary for public safety or convenience. This proposed ordinance change just gives us the option to collect a fee in lieu of sidewalks. So if there is a safety issue, for example, a slope issue or something where a sidewalk can't be installed, that we could collect a fee in lieu of sidewalks from the developer to help us connect our sidewalks elsewhere. So it's just a tool that municipalities use to be able to increase pedestrian connectivity while maintaining some option for recovering that from developers if they have site conditions. Great. So that will just be authorization to advertise, that it'll be up before you at a future meeting for consideration. Item number 21, approval of escrow release from Upper Gwynedd Equities. This is an item that I'd like to put on the consent agenda. And same with number 22, which is approval of the YMCA race on May 7th. Item 23 refers to the advertisement of our regular equipment rental for various stormwater projects. This is something we advertise each year to be able to help us maintain the stormwater in the township. We're also looking for approval of a budgeted skid steer saw. That's a hard tongue twister, for the Public Works Department, and that is through the CoStars program, which is the cooperative purchasing program. And like I said, this is budgeted for this year. We're looking for approval from the board to appoint a new Park and Rec advisory board member who had previously interviewed for the board to fill a vacancy. So I'm looking to put that on the consent agenda. And now, Commissioner Hull, I will turn it over to you for 2 time-sensitive decision-making items for what Isaac was discussing earlier today, grants that we're working on and submitting on behalf of the township.
Great. Do we have a motion to approve Resolution 6-2022, the Monco 2040 grant application for the Haynes Run Stream Bank project?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Do we have any board comments? Do we have any public comments? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Do we have a motion to approve Resolution 07-2022, the DCED LSA grant application for the Haynes Run Stream Bank project?
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Do we have any board comments? Do we have any public comments? All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. If we get both of those grants, I think the Haynes Run project might go down in history as the most grant-funded project at the township. I think that would be 4, right?
Wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
So hopefully we'll have a positive result in those applications. Item number 28 is approval of the Laurel House 5K run. The information is in the packet. This is something I'd like to add to the consent agenda next meeting. It's equipment purchasing time in the township. Spring has sprung, so we're looking to purchase for the Park and Rec Department 2 pieces of equipment, the Gator and the Hopper, via the CoStarz contract. This was a fully budgeted purchase. They utilize it in that department, as well as a utility vehicle for snow maintenance for Park and Rec that'll help us clear our trails in the parks much more efficiently. Moving on to the wastewater treatment section. Sorry, I'll give a moment if anyone has any questions.
Just so I'm clear about the CoStarz, is the CoStarz where you have to go out for a bid?
No, CoStarz allows us to, it's a state procurement program that is already bid, so the state handles the public bidding. So usually it's like a CoStarz discount that we're getting rates because it's a cooperative purchasing agreement for the whole state of Pennsylvania. Did you want to add something, Lauren? I saw you getting ready. No? Okay. Yeah, it really reduces our cost as well as we don't have to create bid specs. We don't have to pay for the advertising for those bids, and it really allows for better purchasing for the township. When we have to, we do bids as well, but it's nice when we can purchase equipment through CoStarz vendors. It's been a lifesaver with the flood recovery at the wastewater treatment plant.
That's different from sole source, correct?
Correct. Sole source is when they only make one.
Sole source is an exception to the public bidding process. So one of the examples is the Biomag that we were talking about earlier. There is one manufacturer for that on the East Coast. So that's a sole source that we purchase directly through that manufacturer. The CoStarz is another avenue of public bidding. So that is consistent with the public bidding requirements for the township.
Okay. Moving on to wastewater, we have approval of a new chlorine tank for the wastewater treatment plant. As you can see in Rebecca's memo, this was not budgeted, but she had another project come in way under budget, so she's able to sneak this in. And since it is currently leaking, we want to get it fixed. Okay. This change order for item number 32, that would only be approved if the board approves the budget amendment because it is one of the pieces of the projects to expand the Biomag system. Number 33, the dumpster veyor. I marvel at the dumpster veyor. It's so interesting. It's literally a conveyor belt that moves the dumpster. So dumpster veyor makes a smart name. This was a budgeted project and the board is familiar with it. Rebecca's looking to move forward with the purchase. And we're looking for the final payment for JP Smith Contractors. They painted the gallery of the wastewater treatment plant. It's one of our final purchases for the flood. So it's mind-boggling how long it's taken with the supply chain issues, other issues. And last up would be an approval of a payment to Blooming Glen for the hydraulic expansion project. So we still have WIP happening, plus maybe now WIP 2.0. And then the final 2 items of business next week will be the open and paid invoices.
Great. Thank you, Sandra.
Doozy of a meeting.
Yes. Do any board members have anything else? Okay. With that being said, thank you for coming tonight, everyone. Meeting is adjourned.